Hey everybody, welcome back to this edition of the FloTrack podcast. It is Monday, March 2nd. It's been about 36 hours since I've last talked to my co-host here, Lincoln Shrike. What's been going on, man?
Trying to catch up on some sleep, and today I woke up at like 8:10, so a little late. But yeah, we got back from Atlanta, and it doesn't seem like it's been very long, probably because it hasn't.
It has not. We can confirm that fact on today's show. We're all going to be talking about the trials still.
Yep.
We have plenty of time to talk about the other things that happen in the running world. I still want to wrap my head around this crazy, unpredictable race. Look maybe at the legacy of this race, what we're going to remember about it in 6 months and maybe 4 years from now. But overall, what's been your impression as you've had some time to get some sleep? Thoughts have sunk in. You covered the men's race, but just both races, either race. What do you think?
Well, the women's race, I think, is the one that will, in the long term, stand out. I think everyone thought if Rupp was healthy, he'd win, and he was clearly proved himself to be healthy, and he's still that guy that's way better than everyone else. But the women's side, when you tell me that none of the pre-race favorites are going to even make the team, it's one of those things that it's almost impossible to wrap your head around.
Right.
And I think that'll stay that way. It's not taking away anything from Tuliamak, Seidel, or Kipyego, and especially Tuliamak and Kipyego. Those two have proven themselves over the years. So maybe it was indicative that we underrated them for sure. I think anyone that said they had Molly Seidel on the team needs to check themselves for head injuries, because I mean it was just impossible to predict in her marathon debut that she would be there. But even more unlikely, I think, than the three that made it was a bad race from Hasay. Yes, I know she was hurt, but still, a bad race from Hasay. Huddle and Sisson dropping out, Hall dropping out, and then none of the Taylor making the team. Bruce didn't make the team. I'm probably forgetting someone there, but just all of that happening.
Bates. Like if you had odds, all those people would have been certainly ahead of Seidel. They may not have been ahead of Tuliamak, but they definitely would have been ahead of Seidel. When it got down to 12, it looked, other than Hasay, and look, if you're following the build-up in the last couple of years, Hasay having issues wouldn't have been a shock. But when it got down to 12, everybody was still there, which is so weird, because from that 12 then, you had the most unpredictable three, probably of that group, with the exception of Kipyego, making it. Like, if you had live odds during the race, you could have gone all the way up through 20 miles, and you probably still would have had, Sisson, Linden, Huddle, or Hall, Linden, Sisson, something like that, right? Even through 20 miles. This wasn't one of those races where it just blew apart in the beginning, like the Boston weather year, right? Where it's just like, okay, early on, by 10K, right? You're like, something crazy is going to happen.
Right.
This was like a deceptively sneaky situation, and that's why you end up like with the being so stunned. It wasn't like there was weird things that were happening early in the race. It's like through 20 miles, it was like pretty much to form, and then the three that emerged were all dark horses.
And do you think that it had to do with the fact that it was kind of tactical and moderately paced, pedestrian paced, and so it turned into just a second half race? Because the men's race really wasn't like that.
Right,
we had one guy going out in under 65 minutes, and it's still somewhat unpredictable, but the women's race so much more way further out there in the spectrum of unpredictability. So you wonder if the pedestrian nature combined with the difficult course, but we always talk about the difficult course. I mean, they still ran 2:27 on here. It just feels like there's something else out there that maybe was Tuliamak better than we realized? Was Seidel, should we have paid more attention to her 69-minute half marathon in Houston? Like, it's just, I'm trying to like find something to grab onto to where this even makes a shred of sense.
And it's tough. I think the one thing you can settle on is those two had the race of their life, right? Like they had the absolute race of their life. Kipyego, if you'd have told me she got third in this race and Linden got fourth, if I didn't see the top two and I saw 3 and 4, I'd have been like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like, that's a little surprising, but not stunning.
Yeah.
Kipyego probably ran the marathon of her life, although she's gotten second in New York City before. But the only thing I can settle on is a combination of the factors, but also just everything went well for Seidel and Tuliamuk. And that top group of 12 to 15 or however many you want to put it in it, though they were much better than everybody else in the field, right? You could, and then there's other people who are kind of like border people who could go one way or the other, but it didn't surprise me that Thweet and Bates and all them were in the mix, and they were able to pull away from the rest of the field, whereas the men was just, it was kind of a mess, right? Like you had Schrader going out, and then you had, if I'm remembering this correctly, because I was focusing more on the women's race, but Rupp kind of just reeled Schrader in on his own, right? He didn't bring the pack along with him on that one, right?
No, he started to make those moves into to kind of
slowly. At what
slowly.
mile, too?
Well, 14, he had cut it.
Yeah.
At one point, it was like 48 seconds over, which is just, I know in a marathon's not that much, but that's a lot of time. I mean, sit there and just don't say anything.
Over 200 meters. I mean, it's a half a lap of the track.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. It was one of those things where you think, a guy's pedigree, and you say he's probably going to come back, and that was starting to be the case. He started to run 5:05 miles while like Rupp was doing 4:50s, so it's like this is only a matter of time. But yeah, when Rupp decided to make that switch, it happened very, very fast, and it's almost like it demoralized Schrader. Maybe he picked up an injury, and maybe he was on the way to the race of his life, but it sure seemed ill-advised at the time. I mean, he got on some great airtime, but then he doesn't even finish the race, and you're like, did he twist an ankle? Did something? It was so strange, and it felt fitting in the moment, because it's like once Rupp passed you, it was like, all right, he ate your soul. It's over. It's over.
Well, what I'm wondering is, like, why did everybody else seem impacted by the course and the weather and the moment, and either ran way better, like Seidel and Tuliamuk, and Kipyego, or way worse, all the DNFs that we mentioned.
Yeah.
Except for Rupp. Rupp ran it as if this was a Chicago marathon and the weather was fine. Like, he ran it exactly how you thought he could run it.
Yeah.
Like, no better, no worse. I mean, he didn't go out there and run 2:07 and
He could have, though.
Yeah, he probably could have. But, like, why did that happen? Why was he impervious to everything that was going on around him and just shrugged along like it was normal?
Yeah, he had a really good race. Seemed like he was very ready for the hills. Obviously much healthier than he was beforehand, which was the question mark. He looked like, he said he had changed. His physical trainer had finally fixed the things that were causing him to limp. He had, in the wake of his surgery, I think, picked up some weird habits with running, was off balance. Looks like those things are corrected. But obviously we remember, I mean, this guy is by far the best in the field, men or women, relative to those things. The women had a lot of ladies around. I mean, this is the marathon, so it's in reality, a lot of people were close in ability. But Rupp is just so much better than everyone else. I mean, you could say, Career's got not similar, but he's at least in the ballpark pedigree of a 10,000 meter runner at one point, but not in the marathon. I mean, we could say that Rupp is a better marathoner maybe than he was a 10,000 runner. He's just that fantastic. Appears to be a solid hill runner, which kind of we weren't sure, because his best races have come on flat courses.
And he had Achilles surgery.
Yeah,
like, he didn't. And the wind, he wasn't concerned about setting off and chasing down Schrader in the wind. He wasn't concerned about going too soon. Like,
feeling good.
Yeah, he just. But, like, I wonder on the women's side of things if any one of them regret being as conservative. Although it didn't feel that conservative, because it got down to the group that we thought it was going to get down to. But I'm sure someone had a move in them, and someone maybe is thinking, well, why didn't I, at the half, just, like, put pressure on the rest of the field? The wind dissuaded people from doing that.
Yeah, I mean, just... I think other people would have. I think, a lot of people, I'm sure, were keen off of Rupp. So, speaking to Jared Ward, he was just like, I didn't have it in the legs. My quads were hurting, and making moves is a lot easier said than done, of course. And I think Rupp was feeling good. And then, once again, positioned himself way above the rest of the country. I mean, I think we can say it on the men's side. It's kind of it's a weak... It was a weak field. I mean, props to Riley and those guys, but and a 43-year-old Abdi, but
it had some dudes. The problem was, after those dudes had bad days, there was no backup dudes.
No.
Whereas on the women's side, there were layers to it, right?
Yeah. I mean, Riley and Abdi are deserving. They both ran 2:10, which, I mean, Abdi literally, I mean, take it for what you will, but he lowered his U.S. Masters marathon record by over 90 seconds.
Oldest track Olympian I saw.
Yeah.
Track Olympian.
But you look at like places 6 to 10, and credit to them. I think there were some debutantes in there, some guys we didn't even consider. So I think that was part of the chorus part. Those guys having really good races.
Yeah.
But the depth certainly not there on the U.S. men's marathon side.
There's an upset on the women's side. It's this other person who was a NCAA champion, or this other person who's run decently well in New York got it. On the men's side, it's like, there's an upset, and this guy who was third on his team in college, or this person who had never even been in like elite, really elite road racing before. Like Seidel, you're right. Take it for what it's worth. Foot Locker champ, NCAA champion, 69 minutes in the half marathon, which is solid, right? I mean, it's not like a lot of people run that fast in the U.S., but that's enough to like separate you from a good chunk of women. So it's not like that crazy. But for the men, you go outside of the top couple guys, and it just gets even more bizarre.
Well, I mean, Matt McDonald of the Atlanta Track Club was fighting in the last few miles. I mean, I think he ended up fading to like 10th.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was in position. We were like, is Matt McDonald going to be on this team? And no, he had run 2:11, so give credit to that. But like, there are just some guys in there that you never would have considered. Yeah. And there, there's a couple former Syracuse guys, Martin Hare and Colin Benny. Those guys were very good in college, but had no. I don't know if it was their marathon debuts. If not, they were still very new to the marathon. No consideration about them. A guy named Jonas Hampton, who I'd never heard of. So you can take it one of both ways. You could say, really good day for some unexpected guys, which I think is true, but you could also look at it and be like, wow, the marathon. Because when Ward and Fauble don't have good days, then the depth is just not there.
Right. Well, and that whole like 210 contingent, right, from Chicago. I mean, Riley obviously came through, but Mock dropped out. So that
Bombolo dropped out.
Derek wasn't in that group, but he didn't finish. Guys, obviously big name like Bernard Legat was 16th. Although I mean, I think that's
18th.
18th, sorry.
Yeah, no, good.
Pretty good day.
Oh yeah, I think he was totally content with that.
If you told me before, but then he's probably looking at Abdi getting on the team. And he's like, well, wait a minute here. So let's talk about legacy. Couple things. What do you think the legacy is going to be of the race? We'll start first on the women's side of things. I asked Des after, like, what do you attribute this crazy podium to? And she's like, well, it's the depth. I was thinking someone would say weather or course, but she said depth, and she said, but it wasn't. And then she thought about it. She's like, well, actually, it's not that surprising when you consider who is in that remaining pack. She says, the three that made it may not be as experienced in the marathon, but she said in 4 years' time we'll look back and say, oh yeah, of course, Molly Seidel made the team. Like, she's really good. Like basically this is going to be the jumping off point for her career. So I wonder if that's going to be one of the legacy. Like, is this the coming out party for Molly Seidel?
And let's not forget, same with her and Tulia Mock. I know she's 30 now, so been away from college for a while. She was very good at Wichita State, a top 5 perennial type person in I think basically everything. Had been strong, had run well, I think in Rotterdam, maybe a top 3. So it's just with the depth you figure and the experience. When you talk about Des and obviously you can't say the experience necessarily, but Sisson and Huddle. But when you look at their superior track times, you want to pick those people, and obviously with Des, but Tuliamok not that far off. Seidel just needed to figure it out, and I don't want to change the narrative because it was a surprise. And then Kipyego. I mean, Kipyego in her prime, holy crap, she was very, very good. It's been a long time, but looks like she's trying to work back the magic into that. But the legacy of this...
is this going to be... Will we look back and look at this top 3 and be like, oh yeah, that makes sense in 4 years? Or are we going to look back and say, oh yeah, that was a zany zany race?
A little bit of both, I'm sure.
Because I oversold the whole... And, these things only happen once every 4 years, so it's like presidential elections. You have a small sample size to work from.
Yeah.
I looked at the last 3 and said, there's not a ton of upsets. And then we got like 16 years worth of upsets.
Yeah, well, we need to draw a line in the sand and say this was an upset, even if these women go on to do great things. This was certainly an upset for where it was.
Yeah, but like, is Tuliamuk going to go on in the next 2-3 years be a factor in majors from here on out?
Oh... I mean, are women going to keep running 2:14 and 2:17?
Yeah. Well, so that gets me to my next point here, which is something that Hutchings mentioned during the broadcast. This course was designed to mimic the Tokyo course with the hills.
Okay.
It is no longer in Tokyo.
No.
It got moved because of the heat. Now, the Sapporo course is much flatter. So, short-term legacy here, the U.S. picked a team that's good on one course, and I get why they did it. They're not going to go back and switch the course. They can't do that. But I'm wondering, when we see the results in the Olympic marathon.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully they're yes, hopefully they're,
Yeah.
how much that tied into the Atlanta results, you know?
For sure, yeah. Do I think that the women have a strong shot to medal? No. You know, I don't. That's just. But they surprised me here, so certainly could be in an Olympic marathon. You really it's so much smaller fields, elite fields than we're used to at a major. So it's certainly a possibility. But yeah, you know, if this was in London or in Los Angeles like it was 4 years ago, we'd probably have a completely different team. I could be wrong there, but obviously the hills played a big factor, I think, in selecting this group. But
well, you got to run the course you're on, so no taking nothing away from them.
Oh,
but
no,
you
no,
look at you look at the six going, and you're like, okay, there's one real medal favorite, and I think everybody else's percentages would be obviously below 50%.
Of course, but 25%. I think someone like Riley can be the Ward of 4 years ago and get a top 10 finish.
I think top 10s are possible. Yes,
definitely top 10, and yeah, that's kind of what you hope for. And
same
maybe
thing on the women.
And Kipyego's got a medal, so maybe she can recapture that form as we saw. Also, in 4 years ago, I mean, Shalane Flanagan, I think, was the top American after finishing third in Los Angeles. So the results obviously can totally flip on themselves. Maybe not on the men's side. Rupp's probably our best bet, but yeah, the legacy of this is the women's race was totally unpredictable, and I think you can attribute that to the course. And the men's, to me, is still put this race in Alaska, and Galen Rupp still the favorite.
Yeah, he's so good it doesn't really matter, all the variables you throw at him. Another question I was wondering, based on this, if you take just the 10,000 in the marathon and you combine those together, is to create the best long distance runner of all time for the U.S. I saw Tim Layden tweet this out from NBC now. Basically, Rupp's the best.
No.
Of all time.
Yeah.
People might have thought that already, and it's, again, putting aside all the other stuff with Rupp, people might have already thought that ahead of time. This was further proof. There's probably still an argument for Meb, just because he got an Olympic medal too.
Yeah.
He has 2 major marathon wins. Rupp has 1 major marathon win, 2 Olympic medals, 1 in the marathon, 1 in the 10,000. But he's certainly dominating.
Well, when you look at times, there's no
this
comparison.
Era.
Though.
Yeah.
If you're trying to add in the track.
You got to just factor in for shoes, so I just don't really
do
that. But, well, I think let's just look at let's just look at wins, because that gives us a much bit broader perspective, and it allows us to consider even people from the 50s and 60s and 70s. So Joe Battaglia and I were talking this morning, like, who's on that Mount Rushmore for the U.S., because I believe Mount Rushmore you get 4. Is that correct? Unless they've added more to Mount Rushmore.
4.
Yeah, okay, good. So he's saying Shorter, Frank Shorter goes on there. And then he was saying, do you put Abdi on there? Because now he has 5 Olympic teams.
Well, are we talking just long distance runners?
10,000 through marathon.
Okay. Probably.
I mean, you could make an argument, right? You could throw other people out there, like Bill Rogers won a ton of
in a different era.
Big city marathons in a different era.
Yeah.
You could throw somebody like, Ritz has good times, right? And he's made teams before too, but
no.
You put Abdi on there ahead of Ritz?
Yeah, 5 Olympic teams.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts, right?
So he's got 2 in the marathon and 3 in the 10?
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
I think that's right. I always love the guys who skip years.
Just and 2016 wasn't more of it,
wasn't
his style.
And instead of being like, now I'm done, it's over, he's just like, I'm going to keep going.
It's incredible, the longevity and really the consistency. He's had a couple, down years, but the guy has been solid.
I thought it was done in 2011. 2012, I went to the U.S. Cross Country Champs in San Diego, and he just looked so out of shape and got like 50. I don't remember what he got. And I was with friends who were non-track people, but I was like, well, that guy's really good. And they're like, yeah, that guy does not look like he's going to be anywhere near the front of this race, and he wasn't. And I was like, yeah, I guess he's on the backside of his career, because he does not look like he's trained at all for this.
9 years ago, are you serious?
His highest major finish, though, bronze, or third, I shouldn't say bronze, in New York City in 2016. But he shows up.
But even then, he was
shows up for
39.
Yeah, he shows up for Olympics. So he, let's see what he got. So 10,000 in 04, he was... Oh, and 04. So he was 10th in 2000, 15th in 2004. In 08, he made it in the 10,000. I remember that because he jumped in the water pit. He beat Rupp.
Yeah.
Yeah, in 12, made it in the marathon, and he dropped out with 16. A knee injury. Yeah, no, in 12. In
the marathon.
In London.
Yeah. What did he even compete in 2016? In the trials?
I mean that fall he ran New York City, and that's where he ran that 2:11.
Okay.
And then obviously right now. So we're at, I don't know, like it's an interesting argument for that 4 spot. I think those top 3, most people could agree with. Again, we're talking about the men. We're talking about just the men here because on the women's side of things, that's a lot of competition there between Dina, Joni, Shalane, Kara, Lyndon. I mean, there's a lot there. I mean, you can, and if you're including 10,000, I mean, you got to huddle with the fast time she's run and the half marathon. Yeah, exactly.
I think for the men, you can definitively say you have the argument, of course, for Rogers, but I think with his 2 Olympic marathon medals and 1 gold, shorter, you got to have Meb. You probably put Abdi on there, and then you definitely put Rupp up there. Mm-hmm. So I that's tough to argue. Other than Rogers maybe having a place on there, and obviously Salazar possibly as well. Although I don't think he's got a big party behind him.
There's not a constituency there.
Yeah, no, that they've abandoned him for Sanders.
I have some for
Sanders. Just kidding.
That kind of slipped by me because I'm still pretty tired. I have some Galaxy brain takes from the marathon. But before we do that, let's recap the fantasy teams, the scores here, because this was a sad moment for you. I'm pulling them up on my phone now.
I'm going to tune out. I'm going to take a sip of my
orange
juice.
Here's my daughter dancing to Old Town Road. You can't hear it here, but they got really into that song this weekend. So, so Lincoln's team, he had Rupp, who scored him 1 point.
Cut it off there.
Huddle DNF, Fauble 12.
Okay.
Wait, B Watts? Hold on. Legat 18, Mock DNF, Emma Bates 7, and then Shadrach Biwat.
DNF.
Who, I don't blame you on that. That was a good pick. I liked him in this situation. I mean, if you told me Abdi or Biwat's going to make it, I'd have said Biwat.
Because he's only 35. I mean, he's 8 years younger.
So for those scoring at home and those familiar with cross country, Lincoln had 3 DNFs, which means he did not get a team score. I guess we could give you the highest. We could give you the last place finisher score. That would be in the hundreds, so that would make you ineligible. So you had a 1, a 7, a 12, and an 18. Mm-hmm. Let's go to me. I had Sisson with my first pick, which, that didn't work.
Yikes.
Dez, 4.
Okay.
Hasay, 26. Riley, 2.
That helped.
Bruce, 6. Elkanah Kabet, a sneaky 16th. I did not even see him out there. And then Sally Kipyego with a 3.
So you had how many qualifiers? You had 3 qualifiers?
I had just 2.
Oh, just 2.
But a 4 and a 6. So I went
4 and a
2, 3, 4, 6, 16. So Kabet was my... And then Hasay ended
top 5. Yeah.
Hasay ended up being my 6th runner, and then Hasay and Sisson didn't score for me.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's why they run the race, folks. So your fantasy team is very confusing. So that scored me 31 points. Gordon Mack, our colleague, who's still icing his vocal cords from this past weekend, did a lot of commentary from BU. Fast races there.
Yeah.
By the way.
Trials a little bit overshadowed that, but...
Yeah, when we talked about that on the Saturday morning pod, so if you want to go back. Friday morning, it all blends together. We were there for quite a few days.
Yep.
Also, we're going to Albuquerque in 2 weeks. You ready?
All
right, anyway. So, I ain't going to be here. Yeah. Gordon had career. That's Leonard career, 4.
Yep.
Jared Ward, 27.
Okay.
Sarah Hall, DNF. Kellen Taylor, 8th.
Okay.
Tuliamuk, 1.
Jeez.
Abdi, 3.
Man.
I think I might have made fun of his Abdi pick, too. And Sam Chalanga, 21. So he goes 1, 3, 4, 8, 21, and he scores a 37. Yeah, so I had a 5-point advantage on him over the...
His second half team, though, his late round picks really made it close.
Yeah, for sure.
I hit on my first round pick, and then after that, it just all went to hell.
Interesting, how that worked out, because Gordon's last 4 picks were 8, 1, 3, 21. Pretty good. And my last rounds were 2, 6, 16, and 3. So that's like nothing to brag about, because that basically says that we didn't know what we were doing because our top picks were our poorer runners.
Did we all select 21? We had 21 picks. It was every top. I mean,
No,
at least every
Seidel.
top.
Seidel.
Seidel.
No one picked Seidel.
Seidel, of course. I'm sorry.
And honestly, if Gordon didn't pick, would you have picked Abdi? Like, I'll pick him in 4 years in the 2024 phase.
I probably would have picked him over Legat, yeah, if he was available.
Yeah, because I don't think I would have. I had one pick left. I would have picked. I picked Kipiego.
Revisionist history here. I can tell you though, as I forgot just a moment ago, no one would have picked Seidel until. I mean, if we would have had 10 more rounds, would anyone have picked
for
her?
the women? I would have picked Thweet. She never got picked, right? You picked Emma Bates. I definitely would have maybe taken a flyer on like Roberta Groner or something.
I mean, Carrie Demoff probably would have gone before,
Yeah.
and she had Demoff had a fine race. She was top 20, but it's stunning sitting here today, 2 days later. It's still incredible that Molly Seidel is on the team, even though how good she was. But rocky road to get here. As you talked about the eating disorder.
Yep.
That she had.
All the injuries.
Absolutely, it's pretty incredible. How old is she now? Is she 25, 26?
I should know this because I just wrote a story about her.
That's okay.
25, I believe. But
Yeah,
I didn't know
okay.
we were doing quizzes here.
Which feels like really really young, but that was about. Dating myself a little bit, but I think back to 2008. Like Ritz was 25 when he made that team. I think Hall was about that age too. So it's not as young as it seems.
Well, it's interesting. Like other countries are going to the marathon earlier, and I've waited for the U.S. to adopt that, and it
seems like it's
not happening in mass. It's kind of a piecemeal situation.
Yeah, but you wonder, will that have any impact? Because you look at some young guys.
No, because
some women and then men, and then but
Lyndon went to the marathon relatively early, right? I mean, if you're not throwing strikes in the 10,000, you go to early. Sisson, I mean, I guess she was 26,
27, 20.
Hasse, I mean, you're talking about people going in like when they're 23, 24.
Yeah, like pretty much right away after college.
Yeah,
and realizing
you're right,
what is my shot to legitimately make a team?
I mean, how old's Gerald Mock?
24.
Yeah.
24.
So maybe more it's happening more on the men's side than on the women's.
Yeah.
So. All right, ready for some Galaxy Brain takes?
The shoe takes. I feel like the shoe truthers.
This isn't just shoes.
Oh, okay,
but yeah, go ahead.
I feel like the shoe truthers took an L this weekend. Yes, I know 4 of the 6 were wearing Nike shoes, but I don't think you looked at it where Alpha Flies was a big publicity stunt and they were being handed out to every participant. Not us, of course. We weren't even allowed in the room. But I don't think I'll have to look at the results. But you look at a women's team where the top 2 were in Hoka and Saucony respectively, and it wasn't an Alpha Fly there in third with Kipiego.
Alpha Fly colors though. Maybe it's something about the colors.
It's definitely a color thing. I think that's an inefficiency we'll have to look into. But I don't look at it and think that Nike. You can't take these results. You can look at the major marathons where 48 guys run under 209, which I mean that's probably been coming forever. But regardless, I don't think you look at what happened in Atlanta and say the results were heavily impacted by shoe technology. I don't think you can say that.
Well, it's not like Jared Ward was 3 seconds behind.
No.
Losing to Jake Riley, right? He said he had a bad day.
Yeah.
That's why he wasn't there. He didn't attribute to anything else. Because you could have, as predicted on the women's side, it really wasn't an issue, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't. And one got on. There was a possibility of 2 getting on the team, and one got on there. And that's, again, that has to do with the better runners were signed by other shoe companies. And that's my overarching point here. Is just, it's not going to work miracles. It's not going to turn somebody who's a 245 woman into a 230.
Yeah, we're all looking for confirmation bias. I mean, I think if the results aren't like that,
I'm certain of that.
Yeah, I mean, when Hutchings himself, I think he kind of made a little bit of a fool of himself. Always, with these outrageous takes on shoes. You're a commentator, and I think you're supposed to be a little bit more measured. I know his thing is like, I'm going to have strong opinions and say that, but you talk all about the shoes, and I don't think it really impacted the results in Atlanta. And then he tweets a day later, Tokyo, look at these results.
Yeah. Okay, so here's
it's just like, be a little more measured in your look. Have a bit of. Take a look at both sides before you start to just make a fool of yourself, I think.
Well, okay, so I had Galaxy Brain takes, and one of them is shoe. And I'll do the shoe one now, and then I have a non-shoe one. And I'm interested to know if you have any. But so here's Mr. Our friend Hutchings' tweet. I'd bet, this is from 2 hours ago, so this is on Monday. I'd bet good money that these shoes, he's talking about the Alpha Fly Vaporfly in the Tokyo Marathon, help most runners to some degree. question mark. And a prominent and respected distance runner agent has told me he's actually losing interest in the times produced in marathons as they're not real. And he's been in the game a long time. Hashtag fake times.
Oh,
I bet that's the only time anybody's used hashtag fake times. Actually, probably some people who don't like the New York Times maybe have used that hashtag before. But here's the thing. We're losing interest in times. But it's people like Mr. Hutchings who will tell you there's too much of an emphasis on the sport on times.
Yeah.
What happened to the good old days of head-to-head competition? Right? Where it was woman versus woman or man versus man, and we threw out this obsession with time trials. Lincoln, that is a bad thing that we're so focused on times. Until the shoes come along and then they make the times lose value, and then, man, I can't even believe these times anymore. As you would say, I think you're telling on yourself here.
Yeah. I mean, you're
longing for the days of times when we could obsess over times. We're in a post-time world now. The people who, and I was never one of those people, so I was on the right side of, speaking of confirmation bias, I was on the right side here. I was never one of the people who said times are horrible and evil and we shouldn't focus on times, because people love times. People love world records.
Of course.
It's sort of the basis of the whole sport. But if you hitch your wagon to the sport is too obsessed with times, shouldn't you be welcoming in an era when times are rendered somewhat irrelevant, or at least a secondary story?
I mean,
do you have a galaxy brain take?
I'm curious. Yes, I do that. I do like that, because I guess I'm just curious if people's personas online really match up with their true feelings. Because so many people say they've lost interest in the sport. I don't truthfully believe that.
Yeah.
But like we saw with other brands, I mean, so many other brands have carbon fiber in their shoes, and it's here to stay. And yes, you can argue with the research that's been done on the Nike shoes that they're a step above, or multiple steps above, or perhaps 4% above, or 7 to 8% above the other shoes. But this is, I think, getting old, and I know the times are improving, but I really do think, yes, it's definitely part of the shoes, but I think it's going to regulate itself a little bit, and I think it's also just the fact that this is how things work out normally. I think we look at past eras, and
you're just saying it's a big era in marathoning right now.
Yeah, and I think there was a discrepancy in past eras when doping. I could be showing my face, showing my a little bit here, but when doping was perhaps a worse problem than it is now. Maybe it's still really, really bad. There's definitely some signs of that, but there were some outlandish times, and we were saying, well, doping's the clear problem here. Now we're not saying that. We're acting like doping doesn't exist, and it's all the shoes. I think that this is a big jump up, and the technology has something to do with it. But isn't it just more fun to just kind of be like, these shoes are legal? It's a big step up in technology. But like you said, let's not focus on times and just focus on order. Because in the end, yes, all these records are being rewritten. But does anyone doubt that Eliud Kipchoge is the best marathoner of all time? Does anyone doubt that Bridget Kosgei, maybe a little bit more than Kipchoge, is fantastic? Okay, if the biggest casualty of this is the record book, well, that's something that was already tarnished completely by doping.
Yep.
So if it's shoe technology that's doing it, is that the worst possible thing? Let's just focus on order, race order, where people finish.
You're getting to my point, which is when this whole thing started is, what are people upset about? Are they worried about what this does to the past of running, that running's history? Are they worried about what it does to the present, meaning the head-to-head competition and having an even playing field there, or the future? Oh, it's going to evolve and people are going to be running on pogo sticks. The present was always, to me, the most compelling argument, because it's like, is the competition fair? Well, now it's clear that companies are catching up, and at least on Saturday you could see, like, on the women's side, better athletes on the day prevailed. That's what happened. On the men's side, crazy result, but I don't think anybody was attributing it. The two guys who we thought could get on that team that weren't there it wasn't attributable to.
No, Abdi, I'm pretty sure ran in the same shoes that he ran in New York, that he ran in.
He was on the Vaporfly, not the Alphafly.
Yeah.
So then so then we default back to, we're doing this to protect the heritage and the past of the sport, which in most sports is a problematic argument. But I don't cover most sports. I cover running and track and field. Yeah. And I know it's a BS argument here, because that thing is completely tarnished and everything requires context. Oh, you're going to have to explain away the shoe era. Yeah, you're also going to have to explain away some insane times
Yeah.
from the 1980s and insane marks. And man, why are all the discus marks? Or for the women's, why did 2 years in China produce all the best women's, like our sport, this sport is ripe with all those inconsistencies.
Yeah.
And it's always about providing context. And this will be just another one of those times. And I think it's kind of interesting. Now the controversial question in a press conference is not about doping. It's about shoes, which I guess is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Like if you were in charge of track and field and the image of track and field, I think you'd be happy that it was, I mean, Rupp got asked about that, didn't get asked about anything relating to Salazar.
I was sitting there.
At all, although, Lincoln did have his hand up the entire time like a good fourth grader sitting in class. So yes, I'm with you. It's like, and I'm also not seeing this whole crazy, the women's world record in the marathon went down. But the half marathon record, I don't know if it was you or I think it was Jason. I get my co-host confused. Said he's never surprised when the half marathon world record gets broken. It's just one of those things that gets broken all the time because it's not a major race. It's not.
Of course.
It's not. Like we can pretend it is, but it's not. I don't care about the road 5K. Again, a list of things I care about, this is not on them, right? So maybe if we have the marathon record going down repeatedly over and over and over again, then that's one thing. Kipchoge broke it, obviously, in shoes, although not the Alpha Flies. I don't think people discounted him as being good without the shoes. Remember, he ran 204 flat with insoles coming out. So if you want to attribute all of his success to shoes, I mean, you can go ahead, but I think you're taking a lot away from the athlete there. And Lyndon said, she's like, it's starting to even out. Basically, we're starting to get a balance where it's not just like, oh, the shoes. Because I say, hey, is it frustrating? You're a spokesperson for a shoe company, but you're also a spokesperson for yourself. So you're going to give all the credit to these shoes?
Yeah.
No. So she's saying, hey, it's gonna balance out. Sisson said she's kind of tired of like talking about it as well too. I think athletes are competitive. These brands are competitive. So I just, again, it's just, if we're talking about obsession with not times losing meaning, I don't think we've kind of gotten away from the original problem with this.
I kind of look at it as, and we'll maybe finish up with something else more fun to talk about.
But we got 23 minutes. I have another Galaxy Brain.
Okay,
after this.
I kind of look at it like baseball right now, where they've changed the ball, maybe raised the seams, and everyone says it's the juiced ball, and just a much bigger home run error right now. And there's been obviously some complaints about it. Pitchers, number one. It does make the game more exciting. You could argue this makes road racing more exciting, for better or for worse. But does anyone argue that the juice ball era in baseball is worse than when Mark McGwire showed up and his arms were the width of tree trunks and his head had grown tenfold? Well, it's like this. Would I rather have the shoes be juiced up than the athletes? Of course, and obviously it's not apples to oranges there, but that's kind of where I view it as, and I just think we've become obsessed, and when we have commentators out there saying this mars the sport, it's just outrageous, and I think it's not a way to present the sport to the masses. I don't think it hurts it necessarily for common viewers. It doesn't help it either, but
too many people are running fast in Tokyo.
What does that mean?
That's not a problem. Like,
what does that mean?
This many, 170 people ran under 208. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, cool, but like that's not anywhere near the list of problems. And this issue was bound to happen because shoe companies are the predominant sponsor of the sport, and they're going to try to make the best shoe they can.
Yeah.
So this was inevitable. And maybe they should have acted sooner. Maybe the limit should have been clear, and maybe Nike shouldn't have just gotten a 0.5 millimeters underneath the requirement. That's fine, but I don't know, man, when the gun goes off and they start, like, no one was talking about it during the race, I guess is my whole point, other than the commentators on TV, right? We weren't sitting there watching it with our widely respected colleagues saying, oh, man, Riley moving up with those Alpha Flies.
Yeah.
Right? It became a race. And did you hear it afterwards when you were talking to the men? Did it come up at all in terms of, oh, I feel like I got cheated out of a spot, or I got this spot because I was wearing Alpha Flies?
No, and obviously Riley's the most straightforward about it because he's right now not sponsored by Nike, and he said, do I think it helps some? Absolutely, but he also, I know I'm in the shape of my life, and And
We
there's
say
a lot of people in carbon.
You got to be in a
carbon.
carbon. You said you got to be in a carbon shoe. Just
Yeah,
Which carbon shoe?
Yeah.
So I mean, you're right. Confirmation bias is one thing, but I can just say it didn't alter my enjoyment for the race.
Yeah.
I was watching two ridiculously unpredictable Olympic trials races unfold. That's where my focus was.
I think a lot of people came in that are kind of hate watching running right now and thought the trials were going to be a Nike commercial. And it didn't end up like that, and now they're scrambling to find other things. And Tokyo is a nice thing to look at. Well, 28 under 210 or whatever, 209. I mean, it's just all looking for excuses to hate what's going on. And I'm not a major fan of Nike, and the Alpha Flies do look ridiculous. And
they look silly. I can confirm after seeing them in person.
Like I said, it's helping. I don't think that can be denied, but a lot of other things go into it than that, and a true race unfolded in Atlanta.
Yeah, right. And if, like, I don't know, Ward had a good day, he would have been in there.
Yeah.
He'd have been in there, and it wouldn't have been because he had a super shoe. It would have been because he had a good day.
Yeah.
Right? That's like what would happen.
And he wore a carbon shoe too.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Well, that's what they're saying. That's in the future. And look, then they're going to come up with something better than the carbon.
Yeah. Yep.
Or something different than the carbon, and that's just going to be the general evolution. Like I want, like, some marathoner who was just kicking ass in the 80s to, like, go on record and be like, yeah, these shoes suck. But you know what else? Those shoes in the 90s weren't fair either,
Yeah.
so I want my records back. Like, this has been a continual evolution. The Boost foam, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Not as big, not as much marketing muscle behind it, but this has been a constant trajectory. My other Galaxy Brain take.
Okay, yes, please do.
I wonder if Gwen Jorgensen regrets shifting to the track.
Clearly fit right now. She's ran 15:10 in the BU launch pad.
And I have no idea. Yeah, again, like, I don't know her workouts. Don't know, if the training was compatible for her in the marathon. I assume, because she ran a lot of triathlons and stuff, she'd be durable, and she's obviously done well running in these track races. But two things happened. One, the 10,000 team just got really, really hard to make. Oof. And by default, the 5,000 team gets really hard to make because then it just kind of pushes everybody
Trickles down, yeah.
And two, you look at that top three and maybe you think, hey, I could have been there. Like, it was a Kevin Garnett, anything is possible type of race.
It was.
And maybe she's not alone. Maybe there's other people out there who we're not even thinking of who thought, oh man, like Tuliamuk, Seidel, Kipyego, like,
yeah.
I consider myself to be as good as them. Now, obviously, not that simple because we had two women run the absolute race of their lives. Yeah. And it's tough to beat someone who's running the race of their life. But I wonder if there's people out there who thought, oh man, like this wasn't just Say goes out and runs 2:22, Sisson runs 2:23, and Huddle runs 2:24. Bing bang boom, those women are great. No one could touch them. This looked like this looked accessible.
Absolutely. I don't think Jorgensen was going to be in position at all. I don't think 26 miles is just a possibility. I think she has had some injury issues. But the one thing, to put this onto my own point now, are you going to enter your own galaxy? I'm going to go into my own galaxy there. Thank you. I didn't mean to just diminish yours or end the conversation there.
You need two of these.
But
I had two.
I realize with Rupp racing, with Rupp racing and having good half marathon times, it's like, well, you want to think like seeing a good tune-up half marathon like he showed in Mesa is very important. However, you know who's not great half marathon runners is Jake Riley and Abdi Abdurrahman anymore. Jake Riley literally got beat by Jim Walmsley in his tune-up race. I think this should be the official end of
half marathons?
This person ran a good half marathon. They should cancel Houston before the trials because we all get so excited about people who can run 61 minutes. Yeah. Yes. But
so that's
the
your galaxy
just,
break?
No, it's not really galaxy. It's just I don't think it should even be a conversation anymore. It's such a different thing. I think talking to Scott Fauble, it was like it's closer to a 10,000 than it is. It feels like a 10,000 relative to the marathon. So, no, that's not really galaxy brain. But I'm much less. I'm going to be much more skeptical of, fast half marathon a couple weeks before. Right. Watch out, or struggled in that half because I kind of thought Riley was obviously a factor being the top American in Chicago, but I thought that half marathon got beat by Walmsley.
Yeah.
that's not a good look, and didn't really matter at all because it's double the distance.
I'm going to wait outside of my expertise here and make another baseball analogy because we're focusing on baseball on this show. I see it as a difference between a closer being able to come in and try to get two people out and just throw complete fastball.
Yeah.
That's your 10K or your track race or your marathon versus someone having to go 9 innings, have a bunch of different batters, have a bunch of different, be in a bunch of different scenarios, be thrown off your game, not know exactly what to expect, and having to manage all that. That's the marathon in this analogy because you have to fuel, you have to do all these things. There's a crazy course. It's just a different beast than any other event.
So Riley and Abdi are either your long relievers or your trusty third starter.
Well, I think Abdi is he's Greg Maddux, man. He just shows up. Is that a guy?
Yeah.
In Atlanta, right? That's good.
He was perfect.
Yeah. And then I don't know any famous closers, but Dennis Eckersley had a cool mustache. The marathon is we'll come back to what we were talking about at the beginning, where you're kind of searching for an explanation for why the women's race ended up the way it is. I think we focus so much on people like Dez and people like Meb who get it right every single time, and we start to think that that's replicable, when in reality that's not the norm at all. And when you introduce things like fueling, and when you introduce hills to this race, how many people just said, I didn't have it?
A ton.
Right?
And the hills were a big reason.
And the buildup has to be right, and we don't know anything about the buildup. It's not like the 100 where they're running 100 2 weeks before that, or a 400 where they're running a series of 400s where you can have an idea of the trajectory. You don't know anything.
Yeah, and everyone's going to say it's good or
yeah,
great.
it was great. It was one of the best they've ever had of their life.
Immediately after the race, it's terrible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's Hesse, right? There's this whole Runner's World article with Hesse about how solid she was in the buildup, and then I asked her as soon as she finished, and credit to her for talking. I mean, she had a very tough race, very emotional, and she said the buildup wasn't good, hamstring issue, and then back, and she thinks the back might be a bone issue, and she's going to get an X-ray. She is not healthy at all, and she soldiered through all 26 miles. Credit to her for doing that, but it's just you have to get so many things right, I guess, and that's where I see it in terms of being similar to that starting pitcher of you have to be able to just adapt and move through
durability
and navigate. And that's why Clayton Kershaw, I think, would be my pick for 2024. Him and Abdi on the team.
47-year-old.
Oh, he's gonna. I'm picking it right now.
Yeah, he's gonna make it.
Yeah, you will not fool me again. Give me another take. Give me another Galaxy Brain take.
Yeah, I don't. My Galaxy is a little. Do we need to address the coronavirus? Because there's concerns that there's not going to be an Olympic Games. That would be pretty devastating.
I don't want to hear your Galaxy Brain take on that because that could scare people.
Yeah.
We've thought about the results so many times, and this is what happens. There's your initial reaction, which is probably good, and then there's your deep dive where you're like, oh, okay, now I'm getting somewhere. But then the more you think about it, you get very counterintuitive, and that's why I'm interested. And you talk yourself into weird theories. So, other than the coronavirus, was there anything else that stuck out as oh man, I know people were talking about how they didn't need to have a gold label race, although it certainly helped because you didn't have to talk about it because all 6 people ran the same.
Yeah, it would have been that. I mean, it was good because it wasn't the thesis, I guess you would say, of people's
can they run
articles.
time?
Yeah. And Rupp would have needed it, Seidel would have needed it, and he wouldn't have had any trouble. But there would have been some mystery because I think we thought the course was going to be run slower than it did, at least for the men. So that would have been not a great thing to have. But you're right, it ultimately did matter as everyone hit the time standard on both sides. Galaxy. And where in the Galaxy can I land here?
I've heard some takes from you over the last. Well, I didn't.
I guess it's not necessarily Galaxy, but you wonder if somebody who was as good in the past as Chris Derrick, if he regrets. I know he's been unhealthy, hasn't been healthy, but if he regrets, going to the marathon
at
too
all.
Late.
Too late.
Because he only debuted in I think 2017 and has struggled with injuries since. But I think it's pretty clear he's past his prime at this point, and that's mostly I think health related. But he dropped out and wasn't a factor when he was really in the race. You look at that though, and then you think, is it just like the Plinko balls or whatever, or the ping pong balls when they're going through the lottery? Because you would have said the same thing about Jake Riley, and in 2018 he had Achilles surgery and didn't know if he was going to be able to run,
Yeah.
and he wasn't as good as Chris Derrick was in college. I know this stuff isn't always perfectly linear, but it is crazy to put those two careers. And Chris Derrick was, clearly the better runner, and you would have even said that before Chicago last October.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's just like it's just like I think of people like shooting 3-pointers. It's just like all of a sudden Jake Riley got hot in one race and he just carried
Let's
all.
keep it baseball. Let's keep it baseball.
Just trying to do all the major sports. It is crazy.
Yeah.
That we think we have this narrative of it takes succeeding in the marathon for several cycles. Jake Riley figured it out in one race, and then he got the recipe and he carried it into Atlanta. And his running had been going terribly before this past year. It is insane that he made this team, and it's just an impossible event to predict. I would say, because
this marathon in particular just busted narratives, because what you brought up right there. The idea that you have to succeed in marathon after marathon.
Yeah.
Well, that's the case for why Abdi made it. Why'd Abdi make it? Man, guy shows up, knows how to get ready.
Yeah.
But Riley just blew that out of the water.
Yeah.
Women's side of things, man, it was about you needed that you need a little bit of experience on that. Well, no, Molly Seidel didn't need it at all. You'd say, Sisson struggled because it was only her second marathon.
Yeah.
No, that didn't hold up, because here's Seidel literally in her debut. Or you need fast, you need really, really good track times, which is what Kipyego was strong at. Well,
no.
Tuliamuk wasn't she was fast, obviously, as you mentioned, but
I feel
Huddle's faster.
You're playing the gopher game where you're hitting one and then there's another one that comes up it never stops. It never doesn't make sense.
Everything you say is immediately refuted by another athlete, another performance.
So what is the best way to put that into succinct terms? Is it just the marathon is wholly unpredictable, and the distance. I mean, we were kind of talking in the hotel room. It's like this event is kind of crazy. I mean, it's the only event that was set up by mythology, by one guy running and going to whatever the queen or whatever and stopping and keeling over and dying. It's the only one that's not like that's how the 400 started or whatever. So when you introduce that long of a race, it's beyond narrative. You really can't, and it works when it works. And when Kipchoge wins, and he's kind of the only one that has transcended it, but it works when it works, and then when it doesn't, you just have to kind of sit back and say, this is a marathon. This is a 2-hour,
it's weird.
2.5 hour race for the women and a 2-hour and 10-minute race for the men, and you just can't almost rely on anything.
And it's just devoid of any, like I said, it's devoid of any data points. It'd be one thing if they had to run if you were required to run a marathon every 3 months, and then we'd have everybody on a level playing field. But it's unpredictable as is, and then you add in the fact that you get really no information about how anybody's doing. We had no idea how Abdi was doing.
Yeah.
If we were on Strava all the time, maybe we'd be able to extrapolate something. But you mentioned Derek going to the marathon earlier. I wonder what Huddle thinks about, man, should I have just stayed on the track, or should I have
Is she a good marathoner? Because it seems like she's not.
No, she got third in New York, right?
Yeah.
So she's good. Obviously she's good. But she's not at that
level.
She's not Flanagan. She's not Linden in the marathon.
Mm-hmm.
Any other era, she'd have been probably the U.S.'s best marathoner.
Sure.
But in this era, it's so tough, and I think the fact that she's good in the 10K gives her this backup plan. But it gives her something to fall back on a little bit.
Yeah.
Which it's tough to manage those two emotions, I would guess.
And she tweeted as much. It's like, well, tough to pull out, and you kind of wish, even I don't necessarily love, and it's their career, not mine, so I respect it. But when I know she was out of contention, but just not finishing because it's like, well, I'm going to save my body, and I get it in some sense, but you kind of wish. I look at Jared Ward, who doesn't have any real shot to make it in the track, so I understand that. But he finished. Yeah. He's like, I finished for my kids to show them we can do hard things, and you kind of want that. Again, I'm not saying that Molly Huddle and Emily Sisson aren't out there and inspiring and don't grit through difficult moments. I'm not saying that at all, but I definitely gained respect for Jordan Husay and Jared Ward when they knew with more than an hour to run that I'm not making this team, but I'm going to get out and finish.
But part of that is a business decision too, right?
Of course.
The idea of it's not going to serve them well to trash their body running 5 or 6 more miles, whereas Hasay is a marathoner, right? That's where she's at right now. Jared Ward is a marathoner. That's where he's at right now. Now they can pivot, but I just still wonder career-wise. When you talked about Derek, that made me think of Huddle. Like, would it have ever, or should she have just said, I'm staying on the track, 100%. I'm just staying on the track. I'm gonna try to just work on that 10,000 meter speed, and eventually I'm gonna hit it and I'm gonna get it right.
Yeah, it's just, will we ever see Molly Huddle on an Olympic marathon team? Maybe not, because she's is she 34 now? Huh?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not counting anybody out for anything anymore.
He's 43.
I mean, I should have said that when Meb won Boston. I should have said that when Lyndon won Boston, when freaking Yuki Kawauchi won Boston. Like, we should have learned the lesson. But then, again, you need a narrative. You need something to hang your hat on. And mine was, hey, I'm looking back at these trials results since 2008, and there's not really any crazy results. But little did I know there was going to be 12 years worth of crazy results in one race.
Sure.
That's what it was. It was everybody decided to run their race of their life or have a horrible race all on the same day.
Yeah.
Nothing in between, except for Rupp, who's just right down the fairway.
Yeah.
There's another sport for you.
Golf.
Yep.
I like that. One other thing.
One of the two major sports, I think.
The conditions were much different than Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I wasn't at Los Angeles. There was a lot of complaints about this, that, and the other, about the hospitality in the course, the heat, the preparedness of the staff.
This
seemed like a pretty
food trucks.
This was a pretty good trials. It seemed like everything seemed well organized. I would have preferred a better hotel, but that was your booking. That's okay,
Well, we're 1 for 1 because your Albuquerque booking left a lot to be desired.
But I thought it was a really good trials. I think it was well run. And
where did you want to stay? Downtown? You wanted the Fenton Suite?
Fenton's hotel.
That hotel was too tall. I would not like
you were
that.
not a fan.
I'm a second floor guy.
You picked a good one for fear of heights, for sure.
Yeah.
But I thought this was really well run. The course was hard but fair. The finish was good, and we didn't have any major issues. And it seems like the complaints are either non-existent or anything. So Atlanta, maybe in 20, 15 years, could be hosting again. It was a good event.
Mm-hmm. And Abdi will be there to make another team. Yeah. All right, that's it, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, you can listen to all these on iTunes as well. We're working on getting them on other platforms.
Apple Podcasts, iTunes.
Yeah, iTunes is not a thing anymore.
Yeah.
Abdi was around before whatever came before iTunes. Sorry. I'm running out of Abdi jokes.
No, it's good.
That's it. All right. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.
Bye.